Independent National Electoral Commission declares Ahmed Fintiri of PDP winner of Adamawa State governorship elections.
Of PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
Federal government introduces micro-pension plan, targets senior citizens who have served the nation and sacrificed their lives.
The federal government will continue to support the National Pension Commission.
President Buhari says next-level reforms contain exciting packages in all sectors of the economy.
Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall review the governorship supplementary election in Adamawa State and examine the new Central Bank of Nigeria's lending rate.
All right, politics has been one of the hottest topics in recent times in Nigeria. From the presidential and National Assembly elections, which took place on the 23rd of February, to the governorship and state assembly elections on the 9th of March, there has been, as it were, no dull moment for politicians, political analysts, and journalists.
You can say that again, Kingsley. Well, as the elections 2019 begin to wind down, at least only two states, Adamawa and Rivers, are yet to know their fate in the choice of who to pilot the affairs of state in the next 4 years.
Well, Adamawa certainly now is out of the woods. That's on account of what happened some hours ago when the supplementary elections finally took place yesterday, and then the results, as we indicated, of course, was announced just some hours ago in Yola, the Adamawa State capital.
You're right again, and that's where we are. The Adamawa governorship supplementary election took place yesterday, and also that's in 44 polling units and 14 local government areas. The conduct of the election is part of our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today.
And also, away from politics, we shall discuss recent developments in the economy. And after keeping the benchmark monetary policy rate, that's the MPRO, unchanged for nearly 3 years, it was indeed a pleasant surprise for many investors and indeed key players in the economy as the Central Bank of Nigeria announced a reduction in the lending rate, and that took place on Tuesday.
Well, pleasant surprise indeed for almost 3 years, like you indicated, and judging from different economic indicators within the nation and on the global scene. 13.5 was based on the need to boost economic growth, and this decision, which the Monetary Policy Committee arrived at by a vote of 6 out of the 11 members to reduce the MPR by 50 basis points.
Well, that's right, Blessing. Many analysts have described it as a reflection of the optimism of not just the managers of the economy, but indeed other players in the system. But what are the likely implications of the reduction in the lending rate to the economy? What also would be the knock-on effect on other indices? For instance, the exchange rate of the naira, as well as, of course, the rate of growth of the economy. Now, what again shall we be looking at in terms of macroeconomic stability? More particularly, how sustainable would the reduction in the lending rate be on the long haul? We'll have our guests who will be joining us in the course of our conversation segment to take a look at some of these questions and profile their responses. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
My name is Blessing Abu. Good to have you join us on the program. We broadcast live on the network service of the NTA here in Abuja. As always, we'll bring to you a complimentary segment, newspaper review. We'll take a look at business, sports, foreign, as well as entertainment news. But let's begin with the morning news highlights. And here is Musbao Den Wahab. Good morning to you, Musbao.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Kingsley. Welcome to the news. And we'll begin with electoral matters as the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has declared the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Ahmed Fintiri, winner of the Adamawa State governorship election. The state returning officer, Professor Andrew Haruna, declared that Fintiri, a former acting governor of the state, secured 337,552 votes to defeat the incumbent governor, Jibrila Bindo of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who polled 336,380 votes.
Amadu of PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
Away from electoral matters, all pending issues on pension payments in the federal public sector will be resolved by the federal government as a deliberate attempt towards restoring the dignity of all those in retirement who sacrificed their lives for Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari gave this assurance at the formal launch of Micro Pension Plan. This is a unique financial product introduced by the National Pension Commission towards expanding the nation's pension coverage to the informal sector of the economy.
The government will continue to support the National Pension Commission to ensure a successful rollout of the product. The Financial System Strategy 2020 is also hereby directed to support this initiative within the framework of its activities, especially as it relates to financial inclusion. In addition to this program, we are also working tirelessly to sanitize some of the rot within the pension system we inherited.
The social investment programs of the Buhari administration is to be expanded as the government settles down to actualize its next-level pledge to Nigerians. This was part of a message President Muhammadu Buhari sent to the 11th Bola Tinubu colloquium in Abuja.
A government coming after so many years of waste must be a government first that emphasizes fiscal prudence, a government that emphasizes integrity in public finance, so that we manage the little resources we have to achieve the maximum that can be achieved.
Let's widen the tax net. Those who are not paying now, if it is inclusive of Bola Tinubu, let the net get bigger and we take in more taxes. And that is what we must do in the country.
Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says public enlightenment efforts by the ministry on the ease of doing business policy of government has yielded favorable outcomes. This was when the ministry appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Information, chaired by Representative Odebumi.
How this ease of doing business has promoted Nigeria from number 164, we've moved to number, I think, 169. To 169. We've moved 24 places. And that's what we are saying, and that the effect, like I said, is that there will be more foreign investment to Nigeria.
Don't limit yourself to executive order. If you are sensitizing people on the executive order, policy of government, the law of the nation, where you feel necessary that you should enlighten people on it.
13 years after the construction of a National Library headquarters complex started in Abuja, the building is yet to be completed. The Minister of Education, Adamu, appeared before the Senate Committee on Tertiary Education and TED Fund to defend the ministry's 2019 budget, during which he requested for additional provision for its completion.
Actually, what is required is about 47 billion. Mr. Chairman, this is a special appeal on behalf of this nation. We certainly need a national library that we can be proud of.
Just as we did last year, I will try to make the move to see how we can get something in this regard. The National Library is so dear to you, so dear to you.
judicial matters, Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court, Abuja, has fixed 2nd April 2019 to deliver judgments on the suits by the African Action Alliance Party, challenging INEC's decision to resume collation and announcement of a March 9 governorship election. The federal government is reaffirming its readiness to keep maintaining an effective regulation of water use in the country targeted at ensuring equitable distribution of resources. Minister of Water Resources Suleiman Adamu says at a presentation of water use licenses to prospective applicants at the ministry's headquarters in Abuja.
Licensing of various water users becomes very necessary and important to our nation at a time like this, when the government is upscaling revenue generation, job creation, improve agricultural production, provision of better health facilities.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria will continue shortly with Kingsley and Blessing after this break.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new Best Ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Dabaden and Ishak Modibo Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls for TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results. Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
Now time for us to take some business stories with the federal government investing 246 billion naira on fruit and vegetable cultivation, just as the African Import Bank has made a donation of $1.5 million to support victims of a tropical cyclone in southern Africa. Our correspondent Joy Uzo brings us details of the stories.
The federal government is to encourage investment in fruit and vegetables production for local consumption and exports. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Obi, said the government is also to key into multi-billion-dollar plantain business. The minister stated this when he visited a plantain plantation in Abuja. International trade in plantain was $12.35 billion in 2016, with Colombia ranked as the top exporter, while the U.S. topped the importers list. Nigerian farmers can earn an average of 2.5 billion naira from plantain exports annually.
We intend hereafter to bring in young Nigerians to take up 1 hectare each or thereabouts and then multiply, following the tutelage and guidance of Contact. And then they will uptake everything and ship to Europe. The banana in the market in the world is about $11 billion. And Nigeria is the closest by air to Europe from any of the banana producing countries. So we intend to take part of it, increase agro-export potential.
And trade edged up by 0.01% amidst negative market breadth on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to close at 30,833.50 basis points in Thursday's trading, as against the 0.67% depreciation recorded previously. CI Leasing led with 14 gainers as against 17 losers, topped by sovereigns, and Wema Bank, Chams and United Bank for Africa stocks emerged most traded equities on the floor of the exchange. Finally, the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, has donated the sum of $1.5 million to support the relief effort in aid of the victims of the tropical cyclone Ida, which overwhelmed southern African countries of Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi recently. Afreximbank President Professor Benedict Orama said that the relief package was approved by the bank's board of directors during its meeting in Cairo last week, adding that the funds will be distributed across the three countries on the basis of the scale of damage suffered by each country. Professor Orama said that Afreximbank decided to act on the tragedy, given the scale of the devastation brought about by the tropical cyclone, whose death toll is expected to exceed 1,000 and which had affected at least 2.5 million people. He announced that the funds will be disbursed through the national relief agencies of the three countries, as they were well placed to deploy them to the most critical area of need in each country. With Business News, I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you, Joy, for that business package. Well, newspaper review is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is with us in the studios this morning. Bayo, morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Blessing.
Welcome.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
All right, Blessing, let's begin with you. I think you have...
All right, so I start off with Nigerian Tribune. Leading for Nigerian Tribune, just as well as the front page of the Daily Trust. PDP leads in Adamawa, APC demands fresh poll in Rivers. There's a writer to that. APC wins 16 with 16, then PDP 14 assembly seats in Sokoto. More details on page 2. Okay, for the Daily Trust, is captured this way. PDP's Fintiri emerges Adamawa governor-elect, beats Governor Bindo with 40,166 votes. Starts right up, but continues on page 5. Just below the nameplate for Daily Trust, Tinubu warns federal government against VAT increase. More details about that on page 3. And Boko Haram insurgents attack Chibok village. Details on page 7. Gunmen kill husband, abduct nursing wife. Okay, to other stories. On this Daily Sun, we have Tinubu to federal government, don't hike VAT. It will increase hardship, he says. And just beside the nameplate, we have IPOP, court revokes Kanu's bail, orders his arrest. Okay, Kingsley, that's what you have.
All right.
The
Daily Independent, incidentally, also has the story on the outcome of the Adamawa governorship election following the conclusion of the supplementary polls. And that's on the first-hand column from the right, or the middle of the page. It says, PDP's Fintiri wins Adamawa governorship poll. If you take that down a bit, you will see that story there. It says, PDP's Fintiri wins Adamawa governorship poll. And the second lead story, that's right there also at the bottom of the page, says, court orders arrest and trial of Nnamdi Kanu in absentia. And below that, a Court of Appeal affirms Fayemi's election as Ekiti governor. That's on page 41. Then also on the front page of Daily Independent, oil companies responsible for high mortality rate in Niger Delta. That story is attributed to the governor of Bayelsa State, Seriake Dixon. Now, the lead story is as follows. Hike in VAT will increase hardship, Tinubu tells federal government. With the rider, Buhari and Tinubu say infrastructure critical in next level. Then above the nameplate, three other headlines will be taken there. Federal government unveils scheme to enlist artisans, farmers and traders into pensions. And herdsmen kill 3, injure 1 in Kogi communities. Boko Haram burn houses in Chibok. And women, 85 parties kick against the deployment of Rivers REC. That's the Resident Electoral Commissioner. There are other stories that are similar to what I just read. Let me take a few of them from the front page also of the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper there says mixed reactions as Tinubu urges federal government to revisit power sector privatization. With the rider, APC chief warns government against raising VAT. And of course, above that, there are other headlines I will take. But there's a story on earpiece, one of the earpieces beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. Nigeria denied foreign loans over herdsmen farmers clashes. That's according to the minister. That's found on page 39. Ayo.
Let's start with Adamawa. So far, of the 29 states that went to election, Adamawa now the 28th, the result is out. It's only Rivers that is outstanding now, but INEC has declared Amadu Fintri winner of the Adamawa governorship election. The results of the supplementary election announced by Professor Andrew Haruna showed that the People's Democratic Party polled 376,552 to All Progressive Congress's 336,383. Amadu Fintri, a former acting governor, beat the incumbent Jibrila Bindo. The supplementary was held in 44 polling units and in 28 registration centers. Amadu Umaru Fintri, it may be recalled, ruled Adamawa as acting governor for 3 months. This followed the impeachment of Governor Murtala Inyako and the purported resignation of his deputy then, Bala Ingilari. He is the second incumbent. Adamawa has produced the second incumbent to be defeated during this 2019 general elections. The 11th colloquium in Lagos, the national leader of the All Progressive Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has enjoined government not to increase VAT, value-added tax. Rather, it enjoined government to go after and pursue tax evaders and make them pay. You recall that this idea of increasing VAT came just after the House of Representatives approved the 30,000 naira as minimum wage. And there were reactions that government was conceding minimum wage with one hand and taking it away with value-added tax that was announced. Yes, and the APC leader also urged the electricity distribution companies across Nigeria to stop charging citizens for electricity they did not use. The colloquium was attended by 11 governors, and the vice president represented President Muhammadu Buhari. President Muhammadu Buhari described Bola Ahmed Tinubu as modern Lagos state leader who was commended for his inclusive leadership style. He says that he laid the foundation of the commercial nerve center of Nigeria into a modern and technologically driven city. He felicitated with the APC leader at 67. Today, is adding that the best years of keeping service to Nigeria are still ahead. The two-time governor of Lagos is the Asiwaju of Lagos, as well as Jagaba of Borgu. But the colloquium actually dealt with the issue of electricity, and he then enjoined the federal government to revisit privatization of the power sector. The APC leader said that Nigerians cannot afford to be too legalistic about the privatization of the electricity. It's a federal government, you may recall, in November 2013, handed over the nation's power generation and distribution to the private sector. At the 11th colloquium, he said he advised government to bring experts together for a more constructive reform to improve power generation. And he also added that President Muhammadu Buhari's second term should be dedicated to changing the structure of Nigeria's economy. However, He said the single most important infrastructure demand is power, asserting that affordable and reliable power will drive Nigeria's industrialization and job creation. There have been some reactions to his comment. They are from two perspectives. The electricity distribution was set to be worked upon to increase by more than 50%, while Nigeria Union of Electricity Employees, NUEEE, sees this as a call, as a welcome development. Mr. Sunday Odota, who is of the Research and Advocacy Association of Electricity Distributors, says, we are not interested in the politics of power supply, but concerned in supplying power. If revisiting the privatization of the electricity will make contracts signed and fulfilled, then we agree. But if revisiting it means taking the asset from the current investors under the same situation and under the same tariff mismanagement, if you give the asset to angels, they will fail. So it is not the policy itself or how it is being gone about. So Nigerians are beginning to ask questions, particularly that parallel is always drawn from telecom. Telecom was privatized and everybody is benefit from it. But for the electricity, the reverse seems to be the case. But apparently, the nuances that, or the impetuses that go into the electricity generation that will enhance power generation has not been cleverly identified, and it's still a big challenge.
It is a challenge. Okay, let's see some other stories. I have you on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Beside the photograph, you have Reps query 269 million naira contract for Durham Mini Stadium. That's on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Page 2 will give you more details about that story. Southern Middle Belt leaders demand reversal of new Nesria DG's appointments. Oh, find out why on page 33. Alleged $40 million contract scam, court to decide Jonathan's cousin's fate on May 27. Page 34 will let you into that. The story about Tinubu at his birthday colloquium already. We've looked into it. Okay, on the front page of the Daily Sun at the foot of the page, we have some stories there. How technology affected our position in OPEC is coming from President Buhari. More details on page 6. Rivers, PDP alleges plots to stop result collation using security reports. More details about that on page 40. Ekiti-Guba, appeal court upholds Fayemi's victory. Okay, group canvasses Buhari's life chairmanship of APC Board of Trustees. More details about that on page 12. Okay, Kingsley, let's see more stories from you.
Yes, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper, this time above the nameplate. There are 3 headlines there. It says, federal government unveils pension plan for 80 million informal sector workers. That's on page 33. APC lawmakers elect shun certificate presentation in Sokoto, and PDP senators-elect may present candidate for Senate presidency. Details can be found on page 8. I already read this one about Nigeria being denied foreign loans over herdsmen and farmers' clashes, according to the minister. Now, right at the foot of the front page, there are 3 other headlines there. External reserves rise to 6-month high of $44.14 billion. And police to probe death of 6-month-old baby in Abuja school. And Gombe councillor imprisoned for vote buying. And also there on the front page, Honore, that's the kicker. Code of Conduct Tribunal chairman wrongly accused journalists. CCT records show. That can be found on page 42, according to the Punch newspaper.
Talking about the certificate of returns, in Oyo State, the resident electoral commissioner has issued certificate of returns to the elected, and he also pointed out that a total of 17 petitions have already arisen from the general elections in Oyo State. 4 petitions are for Senate elections, while 13 are from House of Representative election results. The resident electoral commissioner actually disclosed that elections are designed to renew or withdraw mandates, and he urged those elected to note that their actions and inactions will be judged by 2013. For Oyo State, it's noteworthy that 32 members of the Oyo State House of Assembly had fresh were freshly elected. Only 2 of the former members got elected, so you can see how sensitive the people are to the people who are serving them. The other issue also relates to the courts. First, 2 commissions of inquiry, judicial inquiry, in fact, have been instituted by the Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State. One is to investigate violence, killings, and other related matters which occurred during the 23rd of February and March 9th general elections in Rivers. The other is to inquire into the invasion and attack on the Rivers State Judiciary and the destruction of public property of May 11, 2018. One is headed by Justice Monina Danagogo, while the other is headed by Justice Simeon Amadi. They have 30 days to turn in their report. At the Federal High Court at Abuja, Justice Binta Inyako has issued a bench warrant for the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, the separatist leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. Accordingly, the court says it was going to commence his trial in absentia. You recall that he was granted bail and has since not been available to return to court to follow the court processes.
All right. But just before we take the editorial, the story on the herdsmen and farmers clashes as reported by the Punch being a source of denial of foreign loans to Nigeria is actually attributed to the Minister of Information and Culture. And he was speaking at the budget defense of the ministry at the National Assembly. And part of what he said was that there had been misrepresentation of the nature of the herdsmen and farmers clashes, that in the international media, the misrepresentation was to the effect that this was a north versus south occurrence, or Muslim and Christian clashes, and that of course that then resulted in the federal government launching a series of campaigns by way of lobbying and proper representation of the facts, to the international media, both in the US and in the UK. But the persistence of so-called herdsmen attacks in different parts of the country is worrisome. I'm sure, there's another story that we took from Daily Independent earlier. It says herdsmen kill 3, injure 1 in Kogi communities. Some persons are already wondering precisely what is happening. Zamfara has become, of course, one of the hottest, yes, one of the hottest areas now in terms of banditry and so on and so forth. On major highways in the country, take for instance the Shagamu or Benin Expressway, there are reports on the social media, there are videos being taken of travelers being at a standstill for an hour or more as the herdsmen are on the rampage. They are kidnapping, they are robbing or killing. Yes, or killing. Between Ofosu and Okada Junction, this is said to be a regular occurrence.
Even the Kaduna-Abuja Expressway, on the social media, there are persistent reports raising alarm that be very careful when you travel on those areas. And the danger here is that the police had its hands on, particularly with the Kaduna-Abuja, particularly when the airport in Abuja was closed and there was heightened security on the highway. But of recent, particularly when coming from Kaduna, there is a detour that goes through Jere, a village after Jere. That is where the notoriety of these criminals is persisting. And that of Zamfara too, the banditry is related to cattle rustling and has also been on the increase. But persistently, like you pointed out, in the past 3 weeks or so, there has been incidences of reported farmers, herders clashes and killings related to those economic endeavors. But one has to be very circumspect about this. There is the genuine crisis ensuing from the economic struggle between farmers and herders. There are other criminalities that is going on, particularly in some part of north-central Nigeria, that is wrongly or rightly put to the doors of farmers, herders clashes. But the challenge, in summary, is that our security agencies will have to probably do a review of their strategy, because criminality is on the ascendancy.
Bayo, thanks for the explanation. What I find a bit curious is, again, in terms of the security agencies redesigning the security architecture for dealing with this problem, I do not know the lead agency now, but there was a time the DSS was involved in tracking and dealing with kidnapping. These days, you hardly hear of the DSS being involved in some of these instances, unless they are involved and it is not publicized. Because what is happening, for instance, on the highway, whether Kaduna, Abuja, or Ofosu, Okada, Benin, or Shagamu,
banditry in Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi.
Absolutely. What you
and
just
in fact, Katsina.
These are just criminal elements. I mean, they may look like herdsmen, but they are not pastoralists in the real sense of it. So, what exactly is happening? And they are said to have their camps just perhaps a few kilometers off the expressway. So, what intelligence have we gathered, and how can you then bring these guys to heel if people cannot travel safely on highways? These are major arterial routes in the country. Bayo, let's take the editorial this morning coming from the Punch newspaper. And it says, Criminalizing out-of-school children phenomenon. The editorial begins that the increasing number of out-of-school children in the country has become so alarming that the federal government now plans to criminalize the conduct of parents who promote the abuse. The move appears to tick all the right boxes. From 10.5 million children as of 2010, the figure has jumped to 13.2 million going by UNICEF statistics. The editorial continues, a spade must be called a spade. Anti-progressive religious and cultural practices are at the root of the enemy. Without uprooting them, any remedial measure will be a mere placebo.
Well, again, it is just the intention of government to insist that basic education, particularly at the primary levels, is basically free, and therefore all children, there's no child that should stay out of school. And several states have enacted laws that tend to criminalize keeping children out of school. For instance, if during school hours a child is seen hawking on the street, the parent of that child is in trouble. He's supposed to be taken to court and be charged for allowing the child not to go to school but being on the street. However, the editorial is happening on the fact that, in spite of the fact that the federal government by October 2018 has spent as much as 67 billion to enhance access to universal basic education, the whole initiative will be fruitless, particularly the idea of saying that our children are future leaders of tomorrow, if we cannot actually keep them in school and make sure that they learn to become the strong future leaders of tomorrow. And so the editorial is happening on the fact that it is not enough to budget and make laws, but government has to follow it diligently. And not only that, state government must also cooperate with the federal government in a joint initiative to ensure that our leaders of tomorrow are properly prepared through the processes of education, so that in future the education can serve as a solid foundation for them to be the great leaders that we aspire them to be in the future.
Yeah, happily said, Bayo. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Monday is the time to see you again.
Yes.
Enjoy your weekend.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
Enjoy your busy weekend.
Yes.
Very busy.
Yes.
For good cause.
Yes, thank you very much.
Congratulations to you.
Okay.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break. When we return, it will be time to take a look at what went down with Adamawa supplementary elections as our first topic, and we'll still have another. Let's go away.
The dynamics of modern media management require top-of-the-mind administrators. Accordingly, NTA TV College JOS invites administrative officers on grade levels 8 to 12 in private and public media organizations to a 2-week intensive capacity building course on fundamentals of media administration. Date 1st to 12th April 2019. Course fee 80,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. Venue NTA TV College premises, Rayfield, JOS. Take advantage of the course to empower your administrative officers with modern skills for maximum performance. For further inquiries, contact 0803 314 4383 or 0806 980 9807. NTA TV College JOS, training you to be the best you want to be.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA Standard Studio ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG National Orientation Agency caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Yesterday, the supplementary elections took place in Adamawa to, of course, conclude the governorship polls, which began on the 9th of March. The results of the supplementary elections have been announced, and indeed the total for the governorship election has also been announced with a declaration and return made. We're going to discuss that issue. First, we have with us in our studios here Abdul Rahman Abu Hamisu, of course, is a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. He's a teacher, researcher, and public affairs analyst. Hamisu, pleasure to have you with us this morning on the program.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. And also our correspondent in Adamawa will be joining us via Skype. His name is Tafawa Hamza Mayo. You can see him there on the right side of our screen. Tafawa Hamza Mayo, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Morning, Nigeria.
Tafawa, give us an update. We understand that just some hours ago, the returning officer for the governorship elections made his final declaration and return. What is the mood now in Yola and elsewhere in Adamawa State?
Well, since the declaration by the returning officer around some minutes to after 1 a.m. this morning, the town, especially Yola, the state capital, there were some youths that went out despite being an odd hour, celebrating in respect to the victory of the People's Democratic Party, despite the announcement came midnight. But even though this morning there were some youths in the town going with drums, celebrating. Apart from that, everybody is going with his normal business activity. So it is a pronouncement that people have been waiting, looking at the way the election went through supplementary. So all those that are involved, especially stakeholders, the political parties, the local and international observers, as well as NGOs, the security, everybody went either with INF or with one media station or the other to hear live declaration or live submission results from coalition officers from the affected local government, that is for them. So it was a moment that say Adamawa will stand waiting for the result. And announcement was made by the serving officer, Professor Abdul Kubu, midnight. So despite that, some fields, they didn't need to wait for the day to break before they celebrate. They went out and it went peacefully, except some few places where disconnection, that is destruction of the other parties, billboards and what have you. But this, apart from that, no any report of wrongdoing apart from that one. The celebration even this morning went on. And I believe the winning party, that is the People's Democratic Party, gearing towards the celebration, which they will do it any moment from now. While for the APC, that is the All Progressive Congress, it is not yet heard from any of their officials or supporters, despite some of them just looking at the election as if it's not a do or die affair, that it cannot be turned to something else. So this is one good thing with Adamawa politics. Despite the election is clearly contested by 29 political parties, out of which 4 out of the governorship candidates, 4 of them are female. So the election went successfully, and cooperation from the security as well as the voters, it was superb. So far, Adamawa is calm and peaceful. Those that are celebrating are doing it without any destruction or even trying to do it in a way that the other party will feel pain to it. But the good thing with the politics here in Adamawa, that's how it went. And I believe it will be the same till the end of the celebration.
Hamza Mayo, thank you very much. The election took place on a weekday, and initially protests against holding it on such a day. Did this in any way affect the turnout from the last election you monitored?
It has affected the turnout sincerely. It has affected the turnout, especially in registration areas where you discover that there are maybe 11,000 voters that are in a polling unit, where you can find there are 11,000 voters. You will discover that only less than 1,000 turn out for the election. These are surely telling us that it has affected the turnout of voters. I have monitored a lot of polling units, especially in Yola South and in Fufore. Fufore have only one polling unit, that is my Silka, and despite that, a report from other places except Numan local government, the turnout was very poor. But in Numan, some polling units affected that, so the supplementary election, the turnout was a bit impressive. But apart from that, the turnout was.
Thank you very much. We'll get back to you if we can still reestablish contact with you there. Okay, we earlier introduced Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu. Supplementary election, Adamawa. Yes. What's your assessment? This is more...
Well, I think basically you want to assess the free and fair nature of an election. There are indicators that one will have to use. One is what is the security arrangement? 2, is there any reported case or cases of intimidation? What happened in terms of violence and snatching of ballot boxes? Were people intimidated? Were there cases of vote buying? The entire gamut of the indicators want to show that it is the voters that exercise their will, that this is who we want to choose to govern us. And once the people that are the center of democracy are given all the protection in such a way that they can exercise their right, we could say the election is free and fair. Comparatively, I think it went well because the people were, from what Mayo said, were allowed to exercise their right to choose the person they want to give the mandate to govern them in the next 4 years. That is what democracy is all about. There is a problem when people are intimidated, chased out of the polling unit, and then other persons will now have to vote on their behalf. So these are the things that we are fighting against. Once this happened, it means the process is no longer credible and it's not free and fair.
All right, Hamisu, let's pause here and then try to return to Hamza Mayo. Hamza, give us a sense. Is there any election still outstanding in Adamawa, whether to the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly? That's one. Assuming there is no outstanding election, what is the composition of the House of Assembly likely to look with effect from, of course, after May 29th? Who won what?
For now, there is no any election pending. But in the case of State Assembly election, PDP, APC has 11 members, while African Democratic Congress, ADC has 1, while the remaining are PDP. Because we have 25 state constituency. So out of these 25, APC has 11, ADC 1, and the remaining are PDP. While when it comes to the National Assembly, that is for the Senate, APC has 1, PDP 2, while for the House of Representatives, that is 50-50. We have 8 members. So from 8 constituencies. So APC has 4, while the PDP have the remaining. So this is how it went. It is now in Adamawa State. In respect to the State Assembly election, so it's going to be, that is PDP having the majority, while the APC got the remaining, while
Well, Hamza, let's assume your connection unfreezes and you can hear this question. On the 9th of March, when the governorship and state House of Assembly elections took place, there were 29 governorship seats that were, as it were, up for grabs. Adamawa is the 28th now, with only one outstanding, which is Rivers. And our next schedule, of course, indicates that that will be most probably wrapped up by next month. But I'm sure that observers will be curious to know how it turns out that the incumbent governor in Adamawa is, as Blessing is the only one incumbent who has lost his election. I mean, others, of course, went through by the skin of their teeth. In Sokoto, for instance, and Kano, on the other hand. So, what happened in Adamawa? Sorry, Bochi was also there. But what happened in Adamawa? Yes.
Well, it's not just I'm trying to say as well, Bochas. The issue of Adamawa, there are some political analysts I spoke with. The analysis given is that it started during the governorship primaries. So when some members of the All Progressive Congress, APC, they find it that the primary didn't favor them, they defected to other political parties. That will affect the APC. Secondly, another issue is the issue of this non-payment of government workers, that is the primary teachers, the local government staff, and staff of primary health care agencies. So these are people at the grassroots. There are some of them that spend almost 7 months without salary, some 5. But at the end of the day, the incumbent settles all the arrears, the salary arrears. But it was towards the election. So this, according to analysts, affected the incumbent not winning the election. So there are this issue of this Abuja politics of the team. That is, people living in Abuja is that one thing, you know, that
all right, Hamza, Mayo, again, of course, we lost your connection there, but thank you very much for the perspective that you have brought. But if the connection is still good, we'll return to you. Hamisu, I mean, take a look at some of the results that have emerged and why we appear to have those results. That's something that is a bit curious. You saw Bochi, for instance, the incumbent lost. Adamawa, the incumbent has also lost. And our correspondent is saying to us, salaries have been owed for a very long time, and so on and so forth. That was also some complaint in Benue, but it's crept through. Yes. Why would the payment or non-payment of salaries considering the population of civil servants relative to the rest of the population, why would that, as it were, now become a critical factor in electoral success?
Well, honestly, is a debate that we keep on having. The debate has always been, is it infrastructural development or stomach infrastructure? Why, if you don't get the balance or the mix, you may likely going to run into problems. For instance, if you visit some of these states, the state government is the highest employer of labor. The entire economy is dependent on the payment of salary. The petty traders are hoping on the payment of salary for their customers to come and patronize them. So if you don't pay salary, it's as if you are reducing the flow of oxygen into the system of people that are in the state. So if you prioritize road, it's good. You are remodeling schools, fine. But the next question they will ask you, who are the people to use those infrastructure? Those that are supposed to use the infrastructure are hungry. So except where you have private entities employing more persons, and government payroll will be freed, and government will be able to take on the challenges of development. And that is why perpetually our states are running on deficit. The incoming government will tell you we are going to create job opportunities. They are not job opportunities that will leverage on the creativity of the people. It is still government bureaucracy. So, and that is why our educational system, especially at the primary school level, is always in danger, because that is the only avenue through SUBEB or UBEC, as you want to call it. And then somebody will just say, even if it is this teaching, because that is the one with the least payment. So you can afford to take like 30 and you justify that you fulfill one of your campaign promises that you're going to employ people. So you give them, even if it is just teaching. So somebody will have meal ticket for, say, 15,000, 20,000. So the overburdening of the state government is what is responsible. So that you have to balance between infrastructure as well as the income of the people. So if you don't pay salary for 1 month, and that is why suicide rate was beginning to increase in Nigeria. And Mr. President made it categorically. He said, you wonder how people go to sleep without paying their workers. And he gave bailout severally. For instance, like the case of Benue State that you mentioned. Governor Otom was able to scale through because there is a movement. And the movement is they feel that George Akume is dominating the politics of Benue State. So they wanted to at least cut him to size by those elites that have formed the coalition. And it was viewed that the other candidate from APC was actually his own boy. So they feel that, okay, since Otom is the incumbent, they can mobilize around him and defeat his rival, who is George Akume, and the person that he has brought. So that was why, despite the challenges he has, not paying salary, and they said he mismanaged the handling of the herdsmen and the farmers' clash, he was forgiven. And they rallied around him to say, okay, so that is exactly what happened there. If you go to Bauchi, right from day one, the people of Bauchi State made it categorical that their governor is not the listening type and that they want to change him. But don't forget the fact, again, that Bauchi State, like Adamawa State, is a traditional civil servant state. So salary, incentives, what we call incentives, you are owing us areas, and so. So all of these issues, to us, it may not sound really developmental, but these are the kind of mundane issues that fuel the campaign. There was one thing that Amzamaya did not mention. You know, when Fintri took over as the acting governor, the allocations that were withheld were given to him. And as soon as he arrived Adamawa State, he went to work, he constructed a lot of roads and did a lot of things, and he was able to water the party machinery and everything. So to the extent that people were referring to him as ATM. So even in his campaign, they were like, vote ATM. because you are going to have more breathing space, and there will be more sugar that will be added to your cake compared to your tea. All right. So then
you have to have bread before you have cake.
Then the governor, the outgoing governor, whether you like it or not, he has done a lot in terms of infrastructure, in terms of road, in terms of remodeling of schools. So that is why I said the conversation will continue. Is it stomach infrastructure or
basic infrastructure?
I think, Hamisu, the conversation continues, right? Part of the continuation of that conversation will also have to do with the power and influence of Abuja-based politicians.
Yes. Like you mentioned.
Because, Hamza Mayo mentioned that the incumbent who lost now apparently was wounded, by the influence of Abuja-based politicians.
Yes.
Okay, so that note, we'd like to thank Abdul Rahman Abu Hamisu, our regular guest, as a researcher and public affairs analyst, for his perspectives on the outcome of the Adamawa governorship election. Thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure, sir.
Hamza Mayo, our correspondent in Yola, Adamawa, says thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. We see you some other time. Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the new lending rate by the CBN, now 13.5%. The first time it's gone down in nearly 3 years from 14%.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Won't kill you. Move now.
To they disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I no go dey do am again, because change begins with me.
Let's cross the other side of the road.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge, because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me past where they go.
Make they stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go they stop for the right bus stop, because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thank you for staying tuned to the program. Good morning, Nigeria. Now for our second topic. In what many term as an effort in creating a favorable climate for investment, the Central Bank of Nigeria at its Monetary Policy Committee meeting announced cut in interest rate from 14% to 13.5% on Tuesday. Now, with this development, banks are expected to adjust to the loosening of the monetary policy rate so that customers will begin to feel the positive impact. Here is Victor Azu with a background report.
More than 2 years after pegging the interest rates on lending between money deposit banks at 14%, the 266th Monetary Policy Rate Committee, MPC, of the Central Bank of Nigeria ended with a resolve to reduce the monetary policy rate by 0.5% to 13.5%. The MPC, which is composed of the governor and deputy governors of the Central Bank of Nigeria, following indications that the economy could absorb increased lending to the real sector of the economy, voted for a reduction in the interbank lending rate. The MPC also voted to retain the asymmetric corridor of plus 200/minus 500 basis points around the MPR, retained the cash reserve ratio at 22.5%, and retained the liquidity ratio at 30%.
The increase in both measures of PMI were driven by increases in production, employment, raw material inventories, and new orders. This improved outlook was attributable to the continued stability in the foreign exchange market, various interventions by the bank in the real sector, and the effective implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan by the federal government.
The committee also appreciated the continued positive sentiment in the manufacturing and non-manufacturing purchasing managers' indices for the 23rd and 24th consecutive months in March 2019. The implication is that it will no longer be profitable for banks to keep money with the Apex Bank, and with the absence of short-term options, they may be compelled to lend to the real sector, thus boosting productivity. The decision was taken with the aim of unlocking the credit market and making funds available especially to the real economy, presently starved of funds. The move is expected to encourage lending activities and stability anchored on long-term planning. How favorable is this decision? What is the implication for the economy? Will banks be favorably disposed to the change? Plus, will it create the enabling environment for the much-needed investments? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers to these and more shortly.
All right, thank you very much for that background. Now we have with us in the Abuja studios two professors of economics. First, let's welcome very specially, because he's joining us in our Abuja studios. Usually we take him from our Benin Network studios. Professor Mike Obadan. Professor Mike Obadan is a professor of economics and also a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank. Professor Obadan, pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Kingsley and Blessing. Okay. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you, Prof.
All right. Also here with us, another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria is a development economist, Professor Kenife. Professor Kenife, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me, Kingsley.
Okay. And joining us from our Lagos Network studios, another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, especially at a time when we're focusing on the economy. Muda Yusuf, Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Yusuf, pleasure to have you with us this morning. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, gentlemen, you are welcome. But since we have the benefit of a member of the MPC in our midst, Professor Mike Obadan, tell us, for almost 3 years, it seemed as if the lending rate was cast in stone, 14%. And even now, to free it from that 14%, it was a 6-5 decision, a split decision, you would say. If that were a Supreme Court decision, people would be looking at the dissenting judgments to find out what actually went on. So, why now?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. You are right that for more than 2 years, the monetary policy rate, which provides signals to the lending and deposit rate activities of the deposit money banks, has been constant at 14%. That in itself signifies tight monetary policy. That is to say, restrictive monetary policy aimed at checking the growth of money supply in the country with a view to, taming inflation. The reason why such a monetary policy stance had been maintained for long is not far-fetched. It derives from the state of the economy. The economy for quite some time had been in a state of stagflation, a situation in which high rates of inflation and unemployment coexisted with very low negative output growth. That's a very, very serious problem, which ordinarily is very difficult to manage or handle policy-wise because of the inherent nature of conflicts of policies, monetary versus fiscal policy. And so, under such circumstance, if, for example, in the advanced economies or in economies where you didn't have a recession, where you didn't have inflation, coexisting with recession, it was just recession, the issues will be very clear. Monetary policy-wise, fiscal policy will concentrate on taking the economy out of recession, and then monetary policy or monetary policy issues. But in our situation, we had both problems coexisting, and that made things very difficult. And what then, the central bank did was to say, well, monetary policy should target, price reduction, price stability generally, while fiscal authorities or fiscal policy will concentrate on trying to move the economy out of recession. But at the same time, the central bank then said it could not close its eyes to the exigency of recession. That is very critical to move the economy out of recession. And so it devised several, unconventional monetary policy strategies by which it intervened in the real sectors of the economy by ensuring that credit is delivered to agriculture, credit is delivered to productive SMEs and manufacturing at single-digit interest rate. I think it's been supporting fiscal policy in that regard. But now you said why, the change in stance at the moment. The reasons, again, are very obvious. The bank took cognizance of developments in the global economy and also developments in our own domestic economy. And what has happened is that this year, 2019, is likely to be a very difficult year for the global economy. There are indications that the global economy, is facing more and more vulnerabilities and uncertainties. And the indications are also very clear that, the growth trends, are not likely to be favorable, and that there are concerns about the global economy slowing down. And that one informed the international organizations' projections of the growth rates, for the world economy this year in the form of downgrading. For example, the growth rate for 2018 was 3.7%, but it's been downgraded now to 3.5%. And the major advanced economies, which we normally would look up to lead growth, are also projected to grow much more slowly than what happened last year.
Okay, Prof. We'll get to how the figures are faring very soon. Professor,
but let me just also add that the bank also took cognizance of developments in the domestic economy. In fact, those were very crucial too. It's true that global trends tend to inform what happens in individual economies because of the interconnectedness. But there are several developments in the domestic economy which informed the cut in interest rate. Maybe when we have time, we'll elaborate.
Definitely. Professor Kenife, is this coming as a surprise?
No, it doesn't actually. But let me recognize this is a good news for the industry, for investment, and incidentally, actually, for both foreign and domestic investment. Because 2 days ago and yesterday, we are seeing reactions from the stock market. The other international flows are actually reacting to this positively.
Great.
I was focusing more on domestic investment. the stimulus, that the banks may now revise down their rates, and there will be more flow into. But it's actually more. All right. Now, what I need to say is a signal. It's not an end to itself, but it's a signal, because it sends other signals to all the others to say, now, we've seen it all now. We want to focus on growth. We want to move action to employment, so it's just a signal. But there are more things that the bank has done that should actually create more comfort. For example, remember last year when the committee allowed cash reserve ratio-based lending, that's about 4 trillion naira that is open to that window for SMEs to actually begin to access resources at 9% for 7 years. So there are more concrete actions that they've actually taken that should increase credit flow to the sector. But there are things that Professor Bada has pointed at. The international connection. The U.S. Energy Information Agency predicted last year that the average price of crude last year would be $71. And this year, less, $62. So what that means is that we should actually, the expectation is that we're going to have less foreign currencies coming in this year than as last year. And OPEC has also contracted the production figures. So on both counts, we are going to have a lower income from those. So we are still forced to maintain a high interest rate regime in the country. Even though this signal has come to bring down to 13.5%, don't expect it will go down to 11% to 10%. It can't, because inflation is one of the barriers. If inflation is high, you must still maintain a reasonable headroom between our MPR rate and inflation, so that there's a positive interest rate. It remains positive, which attracts foreign flows. And you've seen that we are having good time with foreign portfolio investment. Is coming in.
Okay, Professor. Let's quickly get to Lagos, where we earlier introduced Samuda Yusuf, the DG Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Okay, so Yusuf, thank you very much. Still holding on there. The reduction in MPR, of course, for some, a reasonable correlation to lending rate to the real sector. But then there are also concerns about the CRR. How do you react to this?
Thank you very much. I must commend the CBN for making this move, at least to reduce the MPR by 50 basis points. But I must caution that we need to manage expectations, because I don't see this going significantly far enough or having a profound impact. Some of the key components of monetary policy, the cash reserve requirement, CRR, is still at 22.5%. The liquidity ratio is still at 30%. And these two components of monetary policy instruments have profound effects on liquidity. One of the biggest problems that we have had in the private sector is the disconnection between the financial sector and the real economy, between the financial sector and entrepreneurs. We have serious challenges, first, with the cost of fund. For several years since this tightening began, most businesses were getting credit at between 20 to 30%. It is very difficult for any investor to be able to make progress, or even the economy itself. We are talking about job creation. The job creation will not come from the government. It will come from the private sector. And for you to create jobs in the private sector, you need investment. And for you to invest, you need financial resources. We don't have the savings to power the economy in terms of investment. What we need is the financial support from the financial sector. Unfortunately, there has been a serious disconnect, a serious problem of financial intermediation in the economy, and that has been slowing down the capacity of the private sector to create jobs. Now look at all the sectors of the economy. How many of those sectors can you profitably and sustainably fund with an interest rate of 25%, of 30%? This is why the economy has more traders than those who are producing. Secondly, we have a big issue with the tenor of funds. The bulk of the tenor of funds we have in the economy is less than 1 year tenor. So if you are talking about going to real estate or property investments, for instance, going to either power sector investment, going to industrialization or manufacturing, even going to agriculture, it is difficult for you to get the funding because the funds are largely short tenor funds. Then there is the issue of access to the funding. If you go to many of the banks, most of them ask you for bank guarantee, which many people cannot really afford. So there's a major issue with financial intermediation. This reduction is long in coming, but for me, it is not going far enough. If you look at what happens in other climes, bank credit to the private sector as a percentage of GDP, what we have in Nigeria is one of the lowest. At least as at 2017, it was about 14%. The sub-Saharan average is 28%. The world average is about 97%. That shows that there is no proper interface between the financial sector and the real economy, either at the level of investment or at the level of consumer spending. And these are things that we need to put in place so that this economy can position the private sector to be able to create the kind of jobs that it needs to create. It is good to talk about stability, but at this time, with the kind of unemployment we have, we should be talking more about how to empower the private sector through funding to be able to create employment. So this is long in coming, but it's better late than never. But we hope that at least as we go ahead, some of these other variables like the cash reserve requirement, like the liquidity ratio, will also be correspondingly adjusted so that you can have more liquidity in the economy so that jobs can be created. Because you can't move forward if you don't have job creation by the private sector in the economy.
So, Moda Yusuf, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. I'd like to return to Professor Ken. Professor Ken, respond to the points that Moda Yusuf has articulated against the background of what you also said. Now, the CBN official lending rate is 13.5. When it was 14%, the lending to the real sector was 20 to 30%. So what is the likely knock-on effect of this reduction from 14% to 13.5%? I'm raising this question because somehow the focus appears to be on foreign investors. Oh, look at what is playing out on the capital market. The real domestic investors who would like to access credit for their own investment are being hamstrung. I don't see how anybody can perform in this economy at 25 to 30%. Plus, if you were to look at the mortgage sector, then some persons will be asking the question, how can you take a mortgage at this high rate and hope to succeed?
Look, I hear you, and I hear my colleague. Look, the end of this, the whole argument is, do we have enough foreign reserve and resources to meet our needs? The answer is no. If you have a monocultural economy that depends mainly on oil to supply you the Forex reserves, then you have problem. There has to be, the only monetary instrument available to enable you continue to attract foreign investment is a high interest regime. Unless you have other macroeconomic indicators that will make you to change your mind. That's why I said to you, please. And also we have high inflation. If our inflation was at 2%, the CBN would be much more aggressive in what it does. But CBN is trying to go the other way to deal with market failures by invoking intervention funds. And I've just mentioned CRR 4 trillion, and people are not asking the banks, why are you not accessing? Why are you not drawing down? CBN has given the guideline. Why are you not doing anything? Let me tell you why. I tell you why. Yes. Look, we have a financial sector that thinks that everything has to change because of the financial. Look, this country, we appreciate what they have done for this country, bringing in over $150 billion since 2005. But we have also paid our dues. 5 trillion naira had to go from 2008 to deal with the problems of the financial sector. When IFC did a survey in 2008, they found that 7.5% was the lending from the private sector banks to the private sector. And in 2012, it melted down to 0.4%. They don't want to lend money, whatever is their reason. I don't want to invent whatever is their reason, they are less sympathetic to supporting the real sector. And you can't bend over backwards to change the game, to change the rules of the game. So CBN is doing what it can do, but let me tell you why 13.5%, or even if you move it to 12%, is still, even if you take the MPR rate to 10%, it still will not make the banks lend to who they don't want to lend.
Why?
The thing is that where are they having their problem from? It's most of the lending to the oil sector, the oil services, not because of what they are lending to solid minerals, to agriculture. No, their problems are, look at the profile of their bad debts. It's all coming from the skewed nature of their lending to particular sectors. So the bank is there to balance this at their own risk. So the thing is, we're not going to put all our faith in reduction of MPR rate. But if you cannot make money available when the bank says to you, go to your CRR, take the money there and lend at 9%, and we're talking about 22%, you have to tell us why they're not embracing that. If you remove, remember CBN tried it. During the time the banks were screaming, when the TSA, when the TSA caught up with the banks, that's right, they all complained. All the chief executives went to the director, to the CBN governor, and complained of liquidity crisis, and they lowered the IRR, the rate, the CRR rate, to enable them really have more money. They did, but with the proviso that you should lend to the real sector. They never lent to the real sector. So MPR meeting came back again and said, look, reversed it, and took it all back.
Professor Mike Obada, you have heard him. You have also heard Muda and the question I asked earlier. How does one understand all of this?
Well, thank you very much. I think from all indications and from what has been happening, the deposit money banks, I say with some respect, are a problem to Nigeria. They are not respectful of government policies, particularly monetary policy measures aimed at delivering credit, at affordable and cheap interest rates, to the real sectors of the economy. I will expatiate on that one. But in light of what Mr. Muda Yusuf has said, he made some points about cash reserve ratio remaining at 22.5%, liquidity ratio remaining at 30%. Those ones, under the present circumstances, should not constitute any hindrances at all to lending by deposit money banks. Why? One, the central bank, I think Professor Ife made reference to it before, has a dynamic cash reserve ratio policy now, specifically designed to encourage commercial banks to access their reserves kept at a zero interest rate with the central bank, trillions of naira. They will access them and then can lend to designated priority sectors, particularly agriculture, manufacturing, and then some growth impacting SMEs. And they are told they could lend such money at 9%, which means, the funds they kept at 0% interest in the central bank, they could now access the funds, create credit, and then lend them out. But there has been some response, in that respect. A number of applications have been received by the central bank, from banks to participate in that kind of scheme. So with that scheme, the issue of leaving the cash reserve requirement ratio at 22.5% is not really an issue, because it's only the banks that don't really want to lend that can keep the reserves at 22.5%. And then secondly, the issue of liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio, again, Muda Yusuf talked about adjusting it. You know, where do we adjust it to? Are we adjusting it down to reduce it to 25%, or we increase it? Perhaps I understand him to imply that we probably should have reduced the ratio, that is too high. But let me give the information that as of today, the liquidity ratio in the banking sector is more than 50%. The actual liquidity ratio, which means that a lot of the funds of the deposit money banks are in liquid form. So it's not that they don't have liquidity. They do have liquidity. The issue is, why are they not lending? And I think one of the reasons, Kingsley, is that with the way fiscal policy has been operated and the inherent weaknesses in fiscal policy, which drives the government, into the money market, to borrow money through treasury bills, there are lots of government securities which the commercial banks go and invest in. So, and the government securities are riskless. They don't carry any risks. Banks invest in them, and I think the range of interest rates at the moment is about 12 to 13%. And, sometime last year it was as high as 16 to 18%. So they find it more convenient to invest in government securities, and their asset structure shows a significant proportion of the asset in such kind of securities. I think that's where, some of us, even at the committee, have drawn attention to say, we as a regulatory institution must find ways, to restrict the deposit money banks into unlimited access into the money market to buy treasury bills. Because they have such access, they also more or less most of the time, hinder even private individuals, members of the public, from buying treasury bills, because they are competing with private individuals. So some of us are of the thinking that, even if they are not completely restricted, measures can be put in place such that they can only invest to social and so extent in government securities. I think once that is the case, that these easy, opportunities are not available for them to invest their funds, they will begin to take advantage of the opportunity provided by the dynamic cash reserve ratio, for instance, and then lend money. They will also begin to take seriously the issue of quality of their assets, quality of their lending, so that they don't, lend money, to favor the people, cronies and friends, knowing fully well that they will not repay. And if they have to lend money, they will have to ensure that collaterals are available, and that such collateral can easily be called in, and so on. So I think these are ways, through which the banks can be encouraged to lend money to the real sectors of the economy.
All right, Professor Mike, the committee also looked at an area that said you're concerned about, of course, you already mentioned incumbencies and constraints on the fiscal policy, and thereby you're asking for close monitor on the public procurement process. How would this help stabilizing the whole issue?
Public procurement process, in the hope that the quality of government spending will increase, such that resources that are, frittered away at the moment through corrupt practices will be available for spending in capital projects and programs. That one can minimize the fiscal deficit which government, have been accumulating. As at 2018, the federal government accumulated fiscal deficit to the tune of 3.6 trillion naira. which is very, very uncomfortable. What that one suggests actually is that domestic revenue mobilization is very weak. You know, government is not mobilizing enough revenue through taxation to finance development. Yet, public expenditure is burgeoning, is increasing, and there are signals now that it will even increase more with implementation of the national minimum wage. So invariably, Blessing, if the public procurement process is sanitized and government anti-corruption program is working such that government resources are actually devoted to targeted priorities, and there are no leakages, no wastages, perhaps the fiscal deficit will be minimized, along with, of course, aggressive or innovative approaches to boosting domestic revenue mobilization. So we can't rely so much on oil.
That's right. Professor Michael Badon, thank you very much. Let's return to Moda Yusuf in Lagos Network Studios. Mr. Yusuf, of course, you listened to our two guests here. What would appear to be the major hindrance to favorable lending regimes from the financial sector to the real sector would appear to be the mismatch, you know, between fiscal policy and monetary policy. And this is one issue, if you recall, when we were focusing much more regularly on economic matters, on the alignment of fiscal and monetary policy. Do you see it from that perspective? And in particular, what more would you like to see as a real sector player on the side of the monetary policy authorities as well as the fiscal policy makers?
Thank you very much. First, I think there is a need to de-emphasize the drive for portfolio investment or portfolio inflows. Portfolio inflows into the economy is a very volatile thing. It can be very disruptive and it can be very destabilizing. If we continue to push up interest rates because we want to attract portfolio inflows, at a time you need them to stabilize the economy, they pull out of the economy. So the emphasis of attracting investments should be more on FDI rather than portfolio investment. Portfolio investment, these are hot money. They don't stay at the time you need them. So as a strategy on the monetary policy side, I think we need to de-emphasize it. If you want better stability, and if you want investment that will stay here for the long haul, investment that will create jobs and that will not disrupt or destabilize the macroeconomic environment. Secondly, on the fiscal policy side, because we are talking about lending, that is the supply side of credit. There's also the demand side, which is those of us that are borrowing from the bank. We need to see how we can de-risk the investment environment. I'm aware that the government has been doing a lot in terms of ease of doing business and all of that. But we still have a whole lot of work to do to reduce the risk of investment. Because some of the things, in fairness with the banks, some of the things they complain about is the high rate of business failure because of the hostile investment environment coming from the high deficit in infrastructure, high energy costs, high operating costs, you know, and some activities of some of these regulatory agencies, the challenges at the ports, and all transportation problem, all of these issues makes it difficult for businesses also to be in a better position to repay their loans even when they take credit. So we need to address the demand side of this issue. And that is where the fiscal authorities also need to come on board. Because unless we also deal with investment risk, it will be difficult to sustain and to support what the monetary authorities are also trying to do. So we should be looking at things like investing more in infrastructure so that the business environment, the operating environment will be much better. We should be looking at things like investment guarantees that can give comfort also to the banks. Some of the problems that the private sector have been having with the intervention funds, even though sometimes they come at fairly cheap rates, but access is difficult because the credit risk of these funds is borne by the banks. And the banks will tell you that, well, this fund is there, but because this sector that they say we should lend to is a very risky sector, they are reluctant to lend. We have some of these intervention funds just sitting down there in the banks, because the banks will not just lend, because they are risk averse. So we should deal with issues on the demand side, issues that can lower investment risk. That will also create a better environment, and that is where the complementarity between the fiscal and the monetary policies will bring a lot of value in terms of investment flows, in terms of credit flows to the private sector.
All right, Mr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much. Professor Kanife, your reaction.
Well, on the government revenue side, we all know the success of the TSA. And we're also aware that the inland revenue is expanding the base significantly from 20 to almost over 60% more people have come into the tax base. And we're also aware that the customs is also upping their game. But the Fiscal Responsibility Commission that has developed this template, operating surplus template with the World Bank, is one where government should give critical attention to, because over 122 MDAs that are supposed to be bringing in their money, many of them are just not doing it. They're not delivering their surpluses. And then they wait until the end of the year, they invoke creative accounting, they give one account to the Auditor General and another different account to the FRC, and that's got to stop. Because that is a significant way where government can raise money and reduce the borrowing, the pressure on borrowing. And I think government needs to pay serious attention to this, to make sure that the MDAs are all operating the operating surplus template. But of course, there's the other issue about the banks, and I don't want to make it look as if I'm going too hard on the bank. Go and analyze the failures, the non-performing loans, and tell me whether they are more to do with business failures or lack of prudence and what type of securities are they lending against. Look at our AMCOM, how much he lent out, over 5 trillion. How much are they able to realize from the securities available? Which is talking about a big gap. If the securities that are available to support some of those loans are in the region of 1 trillion, and then you are looking at 5, it tells you something about the integrity and lack of due diligence on the securities that they take for the lending that they give. And it comes out that it's very insidious and heavily conflicted out. So we need to look at that. I don't believe that the banks have done enough. They need to show more goodwill. Take your money that is at 0% with the central bank at CRR and lend at 9% and get the economy moving. When the economy does well, the banks do well. But it's the other people, every bank is failing, people are failing, and the banks want to be doing very well. Which economy is this? Most economies in the world are based on your customers are doing well, so the banks do well. Here, the banks do well, all the people are going bankrupt.
Okay, Professor Michael Badam, bless him. Professor Badam made the point, politely though, that the banks in general would appear not to be fully respectful of monetary policies.
Exactly.
I'm not sure about that because...
Yeah, well, profits,
I know. I mean, we academics, we may agree and disagree. Remember that at some point I was very critical of the CBN governor, not this current governor, but when the chief executives of banks meet, they try to manage our monetary policy. They scream. Each time they scream, the bank tends to do something. That is, when the TSA hit them, they all came together and said they're all collapsing, no liquidity. And then the bank had to tweak the reserve ratio, the ratios, to release 1.5 trillion to the banks. They say, please go and lend to the real sector.
Did they lend? Government security.
Did they lend? They didn't lend. So another MPR meeting had to come after 2 meetings to say, look, since that's not happening, get it back to the thing. So they've tried. The bank is pampering and trying, but they are fixated. Tell me why they would go and take 12% yield on on government security, and because it's zero risk, and then ignoring inflation, you go and take that money and then want to lend, because if they take at 12, they will not lend you at 12. They will have to put their margin. So it's more profitable for them to put it there at treasury yield, rather than go and get that 9% of their money that is sitting there in the bank and creating and supporting more customers, creating more businesses for the economy to expand. You are giving money to government to crowd out foreign domestic investment.
Okay, Professor, but let's take a look. Given the constraints and other forms of vulnerabilities that we've talked about in the different areas, achieving stability in the macroeconomic for everything that we're hoping to see from the global scene, ultimately on the domestic wing, how do we trail our way, actually, out of all this?
Well, thank you very much. But before I answer that one, let me say I agree with what Mr. Muda Yusuf said about portfolio investment inflows. But I think the reason why it will seem that some focus is on portfolio investment inflows with the way the interest rate is managed now, perhaps to attract them, is because of the need to strike a balance. The external reserves you will see towards the end of last year was going down, but now it has picked up again. And one factor in that one is also the influence of the foreign portfolio investors, along with favorable oil prices. So the need to have a large stock of external reserves has been quite important. But that would be short term for me. Over the medium long term, the emphasis must be on foreign direct investment, which is what he said. And that would also mean improving the business environment and so on. Now, the issue of stability that you talk about, stability in the financial sector, stability in the economy, that would arise if government fiscal policies improve in quality. That would mean, for instance, that government is able to mobilize revenue such that it doesn't incur fiscal deficits that will continue to put a burden on monetary policy, put undue pressure on monetary policy, which is the case now with the huge fiscal deficit last year. And I see one area that the government has mentioned is the possibility of increasing the value-added tax this year. I want to say very categorically that I fully support that position. In fact, since 2015, I've argued, for an increase in VAT. It's been published in newspapers and all that one. The positive impact is likely to outweigh whatever negative impact it may have on prices. And again, the VAT can be implemented in such a way that, most of the items, consumer goods items consumed by poor people, underprivileged people, are exempted from the VAT or attract very low rates. So the increase in the VAT would affect the goods that we see people can generally do without. And so I fully support it. So I encourage government to move in the direction of implementing an increase in the VAT. If I had an option, it would be about 10%.
Were you at the Bola Ahmed Tinubu colloquium yesterday?
I heard what he said.
Okay.
But one thing we must learn to do in Nigeria is that there are certain things where economics and politics should not mix. If you put politics into every economic decision making, the economy will not make any headway. There are certain decisions that are hard and must be taken. They may bring some pains in the short term, but over the medium long term, they yield significant benefits to the economy.
That's right, but some scholars will also argue that you have to manage the political economy.
Of course.
Yes. Okay, I want to ask a question. It's a bit academic.
Yeah.
Now, the model that we hear about, and you've also referenced it in the course of this conversation, is that the monetary policy rate, that is to say the lending rate, should be a notch higher than the rate of inflation in order, for you to continue to attract investors, positive interest rate and so on and so forth. And Muda Yusuf has talked about the dangers of hot money. Portfolio investment rather than foreign direct investment. I'm just wondering, is it possible to subvert this model and see how it works out in the Nigerian economy? Can we have a remodeling to say, look, let MPR be lower than the rate of inflation, and let's see whether it can drag down the rate of inflation? Is it possible? It's an academic question.
Well, I think it's easier for you to bring down the inflation and then gradually tinker with the base rate, because the base rate is base rate. What it means is the minimum, is the ground, is the
it's not cast in stone.
No, I know. No, don't say it's cast in stone, but it's the reference point for all other lending rates in the whole economy. Is the reference point. So we have big challenges on even lowering the inflation, even though the core inflation and the rural inflation, they're all coming down to single digit, but the food price still remains high. Surprisingly, despite the huge success of the CBN and core programs and all of that, we are producing more food. But the thing is that we have forgotten that because of the exchange rate, our current exchange rate, and when you compare that to the CFA, with 4 countries, Francophone, that surround us, is effectively buying less from our naira. We used to buy 3 francs CFA with 1 naira. Now it's 1.5 that we can buy. So all the food we are producing here are so cheap to our neighbors, and they are importing our foods. One governor was screaming that 50 trailers were passing through his border. You can't stop that. You can't say to our farmers, don't earn good money.
Professor Ken, this argument you are making now is almost similar to what we hear about smuggled petroleum products. How many, I'm just giving you an example, how many vehicles do they have in Cameroon, in Niger, in Chad, and in Benin Republic versus the number of vehicles we have? What is the population of Benin Republic, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, that they are importing all our food and our price is going up? But that's a topic we'll pick up another day, if you agree. And then, Professor Michael Badon,
yes,
can we subvert this model of MPR should be higher than, it will be positive, higher than the rate of inflation? And then let's see how it works out in the Nigerian arena.
Yeah, your argument is if we can make the MPR to be lower than the rate of inflation. That's your argument.
No, not an argument, it's a question.
That's the question. No. It's conceptually and even in practice, it's very possible. It depends on the state of the economy. For example, at the moment, in the advanced economies that are fearful of possibility of relapsing into recession, or the growth rate is very low. What you observe is that the monetary policy rates are generally lower than the inflation rate. Okay. And the reason is not far-fetched. They want a situation whereby the monetary policy rate is low. That one makes lending rates to be very low, and then a lot of credit is created, a lot of money is created, credit is created. Then the real sectors of the economy, even the consumption sector, they have money, and then they stimulate the economy. So that one is very few. That's what is happening now. I think, there is a country or a group of countries that has even zero monetary policy rate at the moment. They want, more money to be created, money supply to grow, and so on.
Okay,
in our circumstance, the fear is that since the inflation rate is very high, and if the monetary policy rate is much lower, you are going to be creating a lot of credit in the system. A lot of the credit may not go into the real sectors of the economy. That one will increase money supply, and aggravate the rate of inflation.
All right.
That is the problem.
Okay, Mr. Muda Yusuf, let's quickly get your view on that.
Thank you very much. First, a few comments on some of the comments that I've heard from the studio. First, on the VAT. The challenge we have with VAT in Nigeria is that it is not structured the way it is structured in other claims as a purely consumption tax. If you look at the value chain of investment and production, practically at every stage, there's a charge, a VAT charge on raw materials, on intermediate products, and all of that. So you end up with a situation where VAT is just another tax, not necessarily a consumption tax. So that is one issue. Secondly, the operating environment for businesses are so difficult. The cost of production is so high that if you throw in an increase in VAT, especially that is administered not just as consumption tax, but it's administered as just another tax, it will create issues for those who are investors in the economy. So that is the challenge we have with the VAT. Now, on the issue of the cost of governance, I think it is important to mention it because we are talking about fiscal sustainability. We need to address the high cost of governance in this economy. We cannot continue with the kind of recurrent expenditure profile that you have in Nigeria. It is not sustainable. We are in an economy where by the time you add your recurrent expenditure with your debt service, it wipes out the entire revenue. That is not sustainable. We are in an economy where all our capital expenditure are funded from borrowing. That is not sustainable. This also creates a lot of issues at the macroeconomic level. So we need to deal with that. And we also need to deal with what Professor Ife said about the MDAs not remitting what they should remit to the Federation account. When we talk about revenue, we talk about tax, chasing investors and chasing everybody, and we overlook some MDAs that are making a lot of money, hundreds of billions of naira. They should be compelled to remit what they should be remitting to the Federation account. Perhaps the Fiscal Responsibility Commission should be more empowered so that we have the kind of thing FRS is doing to the private sector. There has to be some oversight on revenue also on some of these public agencies in line with what is stated in the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Muda Yusuf, Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and the Industry. Thank you for your insight, and that's how time will permit us on today's edition of the program. I would also like to appreciate Professor Mike Obada, member, Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Appreciation also to Professor Ken Efe, Development Economics. So
thank you very much
for as well. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you for your time and indeed for the week, Kingsley. It's been a very eventful week.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been an eventful week. We thank all our viewers for watching, and then we also thank those who normally will send in their tweets. We're back on Monday, same time. That's 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Blessing Abu. Thank you for watching.